Genius Kids. Cultivating love for learning.
Chapter 15. The Revolt of 1857. Learning points. Knowledge acquisition. After completing this chapter, we will be able to know about how and when was Vasco da Gama discovered the sea route to India, the expansion of British power in India, circumstances that led to the Revolt of 1857, the beginning of the Revolt of 1857, the failure of the Revolt of 1857, the outcome of the Revolt of 1857. Introduction. In ancient times, India was popular all over the world for its richness. Its wealth and goods attracted many European traders. Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese sailor, was the first to find a sea route to India from Europe in 1498 AD. He landed at Calicut, now Kozhikode, in Kerala and initiated trade from there. Gradually, the Portuguese had a monopoly over the spice trade of the west coast by starting up trading centers at Kochi and Calicut. They earned huge wealth from India. Towards the end of the 16th century, the British succeeded in throwing out every European power like the Dutch and the French and established their first trading center at Surat by the name of East India Company. The Mughal Emperor Jahangir was the first king to allow the British traders to establish their trading centers in India. Later, they set up in Chennai, Kolkata, Mumbai and a few cities of Bihar and Bengal. The British had huge godowns at these places. Gradually, they constructed forts and started keeping their own army with the excuse to protect these godowns. Siraj-ud-Daulah, the Nawab of Bengal, was against the forts and force. He insisted that the British should behave like traders. The British had become very powerful by then. They opposed the Nawab and waged a war against him in 1757 under the leadership of Robert Clive. This war, known as the Battle of Plassey. The Nawab was defeated and put to death. After 7 years, in 1764, the British fought another battle called the Battle of Buxar and won. Finally, Bengal came under the British rule. Expansion of the British power in India. Hereafter, the British used to conquer other parts of India. They used divide and rule policy. They signed many treaties with the kings and in the name of giving those comforts and pensions, annexed their kingdoms. Lord Dalhousie's policy of doctrine of lapse to take over various kingdoms as well. According to the policy, if a king died without heir, his kingdom would be annexed by the British. Thus, Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi was not allowed to adopt a child to rule Jhansi. This injustice caused dissatisfaction and unhappiness among the Indians. There were a number of revolts in various parts of the country from 1816 to 1857, but these were suppressed by the British. Circumstances that led to the Revolt of 1857. Discontent among farmers over cotton and indigo. The British had set up cotton mills. They forced timid Indian farmers to grow and sell them the raw cotton at low prices. They exported it to Britain and other countries and made cotton clothes which they sold to the Indians at high prices. Thus, they earned huge profits and drained India. Also, the farmers in Bihar and Bengal region were forced to grow indigo, a plant out of which a blue dye was prepared to dye cotton clothes instead of growing crops for their daily requirements. They forced them to sell the indigo to them at a very low price. Since the Indian farmers had no use for this crop and they were not paid well for it, and also not getting their required crops, they became very poor. Discontent among the weavers and traders, Indian artisans and weavers were badly affected by the flow of mill-made products from England. These products were cheaper. The Indian industries started having heavy losses and many had to close down. Also, they were not allowed to sell their products to any traders other than the British. This meant less profit for weavers. Lakhs of weavers were unemployed and were neither allowed to start their own mills or factories nor trade in things of their choice. Thus, they were forced to grow raw material like cotton for the British. The beginning of the Revolt of 1857. It was the time of British rule when there was dissatisfaction among the public, rulers of Indian provinces, weavers, farmers and soldiers at the same time. The main reason behind the revolt of 1857 was the Enfield rifles, which had a greased wrapper around the cartridge believed to contain the fat of a cow or pig. The sepoys had to bitten off before cartridge to summon the wrapper. This went against the religious sentiments of both Muslims and Hindus. They refused to use the new rifle. On 9th March at Meerut, the Indian soldiers refused to use these cartridges and revolt against the British. Mangal Pandey, an Indian soldier, was the first sepoy to attack his senior British officer on 29th March 1857. He was legend for the rebellion. The Hindus and Muslims united. This led to an uproar against the British rules and emerged as the first struggle for freedom over large parts of northern and central India. The revolt spread like wildfire, shocked the British. All the Indian leaders like Tansha Tope, Begum Hazrat Mahal, Ajimullah Khan, Nana Sahib Peshwa, Kunwar Singh and Rani Lakshmi Bai fought and led the revolt in their own territory areas very bravely, but were defeated. Failure of the revolt of 1857. The British army was much more well organized than Indians. They suppressed the revolt with their strong army and modern weapons. They used cruel methods also. The imprisoned sepoys were made to hard work, some were tied to the tanks and blown up. Failure of the revolt of 1857. The British army was much more well organized than Indians. They suppressed the revolt with their strong army and modern weapons. They used cruel methods also. The imprisoned sepoys were made to hard work, some were tied to the tanks and blown up. Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last Mughal emperor, was declared the Emperor of Delhi by the leaders. But the British killed his two sons and the king himself was captured and kept in Myanmar, Burma, where he died in 1862. This put to an end to the Mughal Empire. Outcome of the Revolt of 1857. The Revolt of 1857 failed, yet it was a turning point in the Indian history. The rule of the East India Company over India came to an end in 1857. India was placed under the direct reign of the British Crown. Queen Victoria was declared as the Empress of India by the British government. She appointed a Governor-General called as the Viceroy to rule over India. However, this was a failure. No change came in the conditions of the Indian, but further policies of the British rulers produced many heroes as they started reforming and organizing themselves in a better way to fight for their independence. Continuous review. Vasco da Gama was a Portuguese sailor who discovered the sea route to India in 1498. Mughal Emperor Jahangir was the first king who allowed the British traders to establish their trading centers in India. Battle of Plassey was fought in 1757 under the leadership of Robert Clive. Lord Dalhousie's policy doctrine of lapse to take over various kingdoms. Mangal Pandey was the first soldier who refused to use the cartridges and revolt against the British.
like, share, and subscribe.